A very good morning to you. Morning has broken and you're bang on time for live. Of course, you know, every Tuesday we have people and politics coming your way. A lot has been happening so far as far as the fuel tax is concerned. Pain at the pump is what people are suffering from around Chariot. I don't know. Yeah, we had the National Assembly also having the that particular opportunity of making sure this is not going through. For 2 good years we've been discussing about this. For 2 good years they've been putting it forward. Now they want it also to go to 2020. That is what we were extensively discussing today. But is there any new development? What is the way forward?
Well, first of all, good morning.
Good morning to you. Good to see you.
Yeah, in my community they say when something is so bad, you don't use it as a greeting. This fuel mess is so bad. Unfortunately, we have to use it as our greeting this morning. It's really unfortunate that Kenyans have got to bear this pain. But of course, it's not by surprise that we're here. This is a decision that we made a long time ago when certain factors, we decided to walk this road. We have not been able to match our spending with our income as a country. That is the truth of the matter. Okay. And therefore, what the taxman is doing is that he's trying to get resources from any available quarter. We are not so sure now when he'll be done with fuel, what will be next? Yes. What will he be thinking that this is the next possible source of avenue? To me, to the best of my knowledge, I think, like I said on the show last week, there are many things that if you're able.
He's just walked onto my short. We are on air.
And he decided to but because he's a comrade nowadays in the struggle, yes, I will allow him.
All right, welcome.
Struggle against dynasty. So the problem is, I still feel there are sources where Treasury can still bite for taxes as opposed to going for this fuel levy. I know for a fact that we continue to lose a lot of money as a nation through the SME sector by not properly regulating. A lot of SMEs are operating without proper tax procedures.
Thank you. That is what we shall be looking at much later in the course of the program. Let's just drill deeper and take a keener look at what we have in our headlines today, or on our headlines. This is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Pain at the pump was still to come. Changes in tax have started to drive up cost of food and transport, making life even more difficult for millions of Kenyans working families. You have that story continuing on page 2, 3, 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation today. Ruto calls for rise in NHIF deductions as Treasury CS Rotich under fire for ignoring Parliament. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Overall inflation set to rise as prices of most goods which use fuel as an industrial or distribution component respond. Also, commuters to pay more after matatus increased fares by between 20 shillings and 100 shillings. Momeas to grind to a halt again as contractor fear loses from record fuel prices. Also, we have farmers hit as the VAT is also introduced on pesticides. Electricity tariffs to go up again this month as cost of energy is a component in setting a power bill. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Got a D+ in KCSE? A probing question there. Now you can join a teacher's college. Qualifications for students joining teachers training colleges have been lowered amid a decline in the number of students choosing the profession in the past 2 years. Students seeking to pursue diploma courses in education will need at least a C- grade in the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, down from previous C+. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation today. And also it continues on the back page of the Daily Nation today. Also, city shooting suspect died by hanging. Autopsy report shows David Mwai was strangled by the lining of his jacket inside police cell. But was it murder or suicide? That is a story that you want to follow on the front page of the Daily Nation or inside the Daily Nation today. That is just a teaser there. You can follow that story on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, IEBC cannot account for 9.2 billion shillings. Auditor General says Elections Agency claims it used funds to pay suppliers last year, but it cannot provide contractual evidence. That story You have it well fleshed out for you on page 6 of the Daily Nation today. A quick look at what we have on the front page of the Standard. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Standard. Allow me to just pick it up quickly for you. On the front page of the Standard, this is your splash today. Where is it? It is eluding me this morning. Oh, I remember, I don't have the soft copy of it, but I do have the hard copy. I will show you that much later in the course of the program. But this is what we have on the front page of the Star. Police track DCJ Mwilu's money trail, it says. 320 million shillings in transactions involving 3 banks that DCI is suspected to be laundered. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily of the Star this morning, I should say. Detectives have flagged 320 million shillings in suspicious transactions through bank accounts operated by Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu, just days after the High Court temporarily slammed the brakes on a criminal prosecution. Investigators analyzing Mwilu's accounts have flagged out what are alleged to be suspicious transactions. This story continues on page 6 of the Star this morning, and also still on the front page of the Star. Ruto: the rich should pay more into NHIF. The government plans to review remittances by workers to the National Hospital Insurance Fund to match their earnings. Deputy President William Ruto has said those receiving higher salaries should pay more to NHIF to fill the gap left by less fortunate people who are unable to pay big amounts. That story continues on page 3 of the Star today. Also, did Governor Korane lie about his degree? Embattled Garissa Governor Ali Korane may have lied that he holds a master's degree from the University of Nairobi. The governor facing a probe following the attempted murder of former finance executive Idris Mokhtar told journalists on Sunday he does not hold a master's degree and has no time claimed, has at no time, I should say, claimed the same to any state agency. This story continues on page 7 of the Star this morning. Also, we can see President Uhuru Kenyatta here with China's President Xi Jinping at the Forum for Africa-China Cooperation Summit in Beijing. This also, we have all the gritty details for you this morning in our news bulletin. That is what we have on the front page of the Star. Let's see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. It says, no more talks. I beg your pardon, let me try and lift it for you again. No more talks with Uganda over Migingo. Bare knuckle, Matiang'i talks tough, says previous efforts at diplomacy have not worked and a security committee has been formed to tackle the issue. This story is on page 6 of the People Daily this morning. Also, Raila still ODM's 2022 flag bearer, say leaders, allies of ex-premier say no one will be allowed to carry the party presidential ticket until he ascends to power. That is a story that you want to follow inside on page 8 of the People Daily this morning. China unveils 6 trillion shillings kitty to drive Africa's development bid. Of course, we know that Forum on China-Africa Cooperation is ongoing in Beijing. We shall give you all the details of this also in our news bulletin this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily or Taifa Leo before we head there. Ushuru zaidi njiani. That is what Ruto is saying. Ushuru zaidi njiani. That is what we have on the front page. Serikali yapanga kuongeza ada za NHIF kwa wafanyikazi. That is a bei ya mafuta zajitokeza. Also, it says Kenya ndio nambari moja kwa bei ya juu ya mafuta. So we don't know this is in the world or in Africa. Kenya sasa ndio inayoongoza Afrika Mashariki kwa kuuza mafuta kwa bei ya ghali zaidi. Hii ni kufuatia kwanza kutekelezwa kwa ushuru wa asilimia 16 wa VAT. You can follow this story on page 2 of Taifa Leo this morning. Also on the front page of the Standard, this is what you're waking up to this morning. Cornered Rotich to drop fuel tax is what is headlining the front page of the Standard this morning. And you can see also protests there. We have Nakuru County motorists and residents demonstrating along Kanu Street in Nakuru town yesterday, protesting the implementation of the new fuel levy. The demonstrators paralyzed transport in the town for hours, and you have also reports suggesting government could abandon the 16% VAT on petroleum products, but Treasury will in turn cut ministry budgets. This story continues on page 6, 7 and 8 of Standard. Also, comedian plotted to kill 4 relatives. Popular radio actor Joseph Mochore, better known as Okibiro Omose, attempted to kill his wife, brothers and other family members before hanging himself on Saturday. You can follow the story of this comedian from HSA FM. You have the story on page 18 of the Standard this morning as well. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of the Business Daily. And this is your splash this morning on the front page of the Business Daily. It says MPs to recall House over fuel taxes, shortage looms. Nandi Hills MP Alfred Kitera says 150 lawmakers have supported calls to discuss Treasury. CS Henry Rotich defiance over their vote. And we know, of course, there has been that call for Rotich to be impeached. So will this be the time? MPs want National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi to recall the House from recess to discuss the Treasury's implementation of new tax on fuel, as a strike called by small petroleum suppliers signaled a possible shortage of the commodity. They are the MPs led by Alfred Kitera, Caleb Amisi, Tindi Mwale and Godfrey Osotsi yesterday called for an informal meeting of members, popularly known as Kamukunji, to discuss the increase in fuel prices, even after Parliament last week voted to freeze the collection of the 16% value-added tax on petroleum products until 2020. That is what you want to follow on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. And also you have another picture here on the front page of the Business Daily as well. This is still what was happening in Nakuru. I just showed you. You can follow that story inside the Business Daily. Powerful Treasury agency to vet new projects. A new powerful Treasury-based agency is set to take up vetting and approval of new public projects valued above 100 million shillings to curb rampant wastage of billions of shillings of taxpayers' cash. The draft Public Investment Management (PIM) guidelines proposed a Public Investment Management Department to appraise all requests for funding based on quality and cost effectiveness of intended projects. You have the story tucked away on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. A sad story we have for you as well. Moi regime power men fight with squatters on Nandi land. Former senior civil servants and influential politicians in retired President Daniel Arap Moi's regime are embroiled in a tussle with squatters occupying Agricultural Development Corporation land in Nandi, also drawn into the dispute, the ADC management and the Nandi County government. That story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's see at what we have on the ticker here. Top earners to pay more for NHIF. This is what Ruto is saying. Also, how Rwanda is saving banana crop with SMS. Find all the details on that. Also, banks forex deposits rise by 60 billion shillings in June. That is on Money and Market inside the Business Daily. We cross over now to other regions where we can see the dailies, what they're holding for us. China set to pump 136 trillion shillings into Africa in next 3 years. This is what we have as the headlining story on the front page of the Citizen. China-Africa Summit opens with Chinese President Xi Jinping pledging $60 billion in new development funding to the continent with no political strings attached. That story continues on page 2 of the Citizen. Also, why investors' appetite for government securities is waning. Investors' appetite in risk-free government securities is increasingly lessening as recent decisions render them less profitable. This is forcing banks and other institutional investors to seek solace elsewhere, including personal loans. And this story continues on page 2 of the Citizen. Also, John Pombe Magufuli graces signing of contract for new Lake Victoria ship. The 90 billion shillings ship, it says, will be the biggest vessel operating on the lake, and this is expected to boost trade among East African communities nations. That story tucked away on page 3 of the Citizen this morning. We have as well Mwananchi for you. John Pombe Magufuli ahitimisha kilio cha miaka 12, ashuhudia utiaji saini wa mikataba 4 ya ujenzi wa meli chelezo na ukarabati wa meli 2 za MV Butiama na MV Victoria jijini Mwanza. You can follow this story also inside the Mwananchi. If you're waking up in Tanzania this morning, walimu wanaodaiwa kumwadhibu mwanafunzi kizimbani kwa mauaji. Find all the details of this on page 3 of the Mwananchi in Tanzania. In Rwanda, we have the New Times for you, and this is your splash today. I beg your pardon. Let me try and lift it for you again. Polls Remember, they are having their parliamentary elections going on there. It's a landslide for RPF. This is what Nkuntanyi is saying. The governing RPF Nkuntanyi is headed for a landslide victory from Monday's legislative elections, according to partial results released last night by the National Electoral Commission, NEC. This is in Rwanda. And it says with 70% of the votes counted by the press time, the Rwanda Patriotic Front-led coalition, which also includes 6 smaller parties, had drummed to a commanding 75% of the votes. That is what we have on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. And of course, one of our panelists is not here today. That is Otende Amolo. Is in Rwanda also as an observer. That is what we have on the front page of the New Times. Legislative elections, voters, stakeholders weigh in on polls. You have that story on page 3. And Kagame, a stronger Africa is an opportunity, not a threat. We can see him here, President Kagame, shaking hands with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the launch of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit in Beijing yesterday. The president described the existing relationship between China and Africa as one based on equality, mutual respect, and a commitment to a shared well-being. We have that story for you. We'll give it to you in a moment. And let's see what we have on the front page also of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Bobi Wine recounts how he was tortured in Arua. This is a story that you want to follow. The Kyondonda East legislator, who is in the US for treatment, narrates events leading to his arrest and torture on August the 13th ahead of the Arua municipality by-election. This story continues on page 4 of the Daily Monitor. Also, new wheels. Kayihura appears in new vehicle. The former Inspector General of Police, General Kale Kayihura, was driven to the General Court Martial in Makinde, Kampala in this vehicle yesterday. General Kayihura, who is supposed to report to the court every first Monday of the month, according to the bail times, I should say, last week used a private vehicle while leaving the court. 8 firms bid to build Ginger Expressway and Pearl of Africa hotel fires. All staff. Find all the details on page 3 of the Daily Monitor if you're waking up in Uganda. Right, let's see also what we have this month on the front page of the... This is supposed to be... Let's try and see if I can make it clear for... This is on the front page of the Nairobi Law Monthly. Taking no prisoners, and of course you can see the duo. Uhuru's graft gladiator talks about the honor of public office, his mission, work ethic, thoughts on threats of the Kenyan state. This is exclusive interview with the DCI, George Kinoti. This is in the recent Nairobi Law Monthly. This is a September edition. You can grab a copy for yourself as well. Let's see also what we have on the front page of the Nairobi Business Monthly as well. If I can just lift that for you, this is how it looks as well. Nairobi Business Monthly, the September edition. We have Makueni Rising, testimony of the power of people-centered development. This is on the front page of the Nairobi Business Monthly as well. Editorial cartoons, lastly, this is what we have in the Daily Nation today, right? Woi, 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 everyone is crying. Append to the bill. National debt is killing us. Woi, woi, protect your legacy. Scrap the 16% VAT. Woi, woi, save us, save us. Oi, this is what our Kenyans are crying this morning. This is in regard to, of course, the 16% VAT and financial bill. President Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenyans are crying. Everyone is crying, woi, oi. And Boni Khalwale can help us here because he has been in the house. He used to cry, oi, oi. In the morning is Boni Khalwale. Then let's see what we have on the front page also. Not really on the editorial pages of the People Daily. Impeachment, there we have MPs. And who do we have in the sling here? This is the Treasury. CS Cabinet Rotich, that is Cabinet Secretary Rotich, who is actually facing an impeachment. The MPs are yet to meet today. That is what we have on inside the editorial page of the People Daily. Let's see what we have on the front page also. Not really on the front page, but the editorial page of the Standard. Full tank. And this is, we can see the people who are filling these particular tanks. Wananchi are watching, and who is, or who are the people who are actually occupying, or they're inside this particular car. That the number plate is all about corruption. I'll leave it for you to decipher. This is what we have inside the Daily Nation today, right? Let's hear from Boni Khalwale. If you can cry for us, help Kenya cry. Boni Khalwale, are you looking at today's editorial cartoon?
Yes.
Can you give us of course, your quintessential cry in Parliament that we know you're known for?
You want me to cry?
Yeah, I want you to cry for Kenyans, on behalf of Kenyans. Let's just have the editorial cartoon for Boni Khalwale to cry on behalf of Kenyans this morning.
I really would like to cry, but in my culture, men don't cry. What will my granddaughter choose?
What do they do? So when we are in such situation, what do men do? When we are in such a situation, how do men?
Men only curse.
They curse.
They say, oh,
oh,
oh.
All right. So when you're saying Kimunyo,
oh,
Kimunyo,
oh, but you don't cry. Oh.
All right. Okay. Let's see what we have in our highlights this morning. Also, to see what is at issue this morning. Kenyans hit by the fast changes caused by the 16 VAT on fuel. Auditor General reports reveals irregular procurement, fake records, double payments, and unnecessary costs. And the emergency services munition, of course, blazes down or brings down a factory in South Africa. Now, the Auditor General's scrutiny, I should say, has revealed wrongdoing in the procurement of both hardware and software for last year's August 8th general election and the October 26th fresh presidential poll that followed. The report details how records were falsified to cover up unnecessary expenditure on hardware for the fresh presidential poll, how double payments were made to the Algurai printing firm, and how the commission inexplicably paid out hundreds of millions of shillings for software against expert advice. The amount in question total 9.2 billion shillings, with the IEBC spending spree coming as a slap in the face of the millions of Kenyans who now have to toil that much harder to make ends meet as they shoulder a punitive tax burden.
While the internal audit that led to the interdiction of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission CEO Ezra Chiloba was indicative of a secretariat with money burning a hole in their pocket, the Auditor General's findings are much more grave. The report reveals that the Commission was imprudent with as much as 9.2 billion shillings of the taxpayers' monies. The report shows the Commission repeatedly violated procurement laws when it disregarded the recommendations of the Tender Evaluation Committee and its own IT department, going ahead to pay as much as 6 times the recommended price on software. The IEBC, for instance, paid 452 million shillings to IBM management for the maintenance of the BVR server infrastructure and security monitoring of the KIEMS kits, while it should have paid 75 million shillings. A physical verification undertaken by the auditors on June 19, 2018 reveals that no installations have been done at both primary and secondary data centers, and some of the deliverables have not been undertaken by the contractor. African Neurotic Systems was paid 249 million shillings to build a new converged server for a primary data center and disaster recovery site. A verification by the auditors shows that data centers were never utilized for the intended purposes. In these circumstances, the Commission paid the vendor before testing and commissioning the equipment. A contract for the provision of an Oracle database and security solution was also incredulously awarded through direct procurement to the same company in a record 3 days and at a cost of 274 million shillings and not the requisitioned 80 million shillings. As much as 127 million shillings for data bundles was also wasted, with only 605.3 GB valued at 515,269 shillings used against a purchase of 149 640.5 gigabytes of data. And the wastage doesn't stop there. Out of 1,000 Thuraya satellite data modems and SIM cards with unlimited bundles procured, only about a third were used. The Commission cannot also explain why an additional 856 million shillings was spent on KIEMS kits, power banks, protective cases and SD cards for the fresh presidential election. or why for the repeat presidential election, the Commission ordered an extra 42,927 ballot boxes at 107 million shillings and for an inflated unit price of 2,500 compared to the 1,500 price tag for the general election. Wastage which the Auditor General has found was well within the Commission's power to avoid had they studied the data put at the disposal. Indications are that the Commission did not evaluate actual data required, which would have been the basis for determination of the actual cost. And for an election overturned on the basis of technology, the question now becomes, was the gross mismanagement of public funds the product of foolhardy or criminal intent?
Gross misappropriation of public funds is where we actually find ourselves in a pickle here in a country when it comes now to, of course, the rising cost of living with now even what is, well, we always say that we are always waiting for the other shoe to drop. The VAT 16% that has been slapped also on Mwananchi. Right now people are also paying high prices when it comes to fuel. We want to introduce our guest this morning to just weigh in on what is happening, especially from IEBC's front. That is just the letters from the Auditor General. We want to hear from them. There has been question on also whether some of, or the IEBC in its entirety should actually be shown the door. Do we find any resourceful use of this particular commissioners that they have been embroiled in so much controversy? Allow me to introduce to you this morning, if you just joined us or this morning, or you saw us at the top of the hour, we introduced to you earlier Senator Editorial, who is a senator from Kericho. Also joining us this morning is Boni Khalwale as well, who is the deputy chair of Ford Kenya. We do have with us as well Senator Isaac Mwaura, who is a nominated senator. We have Chakra Medio, who is the former member of parliament from Gem, and also we do have Kimani Matangi with us this morning, who is a senator from Kiambu as well. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
IEBC still, this is a fresh report from the Auditor General. Let's hear your reactions, Boni Khalwale.
I think this is just further confirmation that the guys we have in office for IEBC are not the right people. And we made that particular conclusion over a year ago when they mismanaged elections, including mine. And therefore, it is not surprising. And if you look in the papers today,
yes,
the auditor is saying they also cannot account for 9.2 billion shillings. These are people who should not only be shown the door, but they should also go to jail. Yeah.
All right. Let's hear from Aaron Cheriot.
Well, it's really unfortunate when you keep on hearing about such news, especially in such a time as this, as we are trying to tax everything and anything possible on the poor and overtaxed Kenyan taxpayer. It is really unfortunate that you have public officials, and this boils down to something that I've been saying each and every other time. Why is it that as a people we don't love our country? Because these people that you're talking about, they are not foreigners. They live amongst us. They know how difficult times are for us Kenyans. But I don't know what it is that is wrong with us Kenyans, that every public official, that so long as you've given them the authority to be in charge of public resources, the next thing you hear is a scandal here and another one there. It's really unfortunate, and it calls for us as a people and as a country to really reevaluate ourselves and question what is our moral foundation as a people. Is it that anything, so long as you get money, counts at the end of the day, or a time has come for us to reason and say, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul?
Yeah, good. Let's say from Isaac Mwaura, first of all, we're looking at this particular report, and the way we saw actually the commissioners going back to, trying to actually go back. This is Connie and Margaret as well, trying to go back to the commission after their resignation. Was this the report that people were eagerly awaiting for, and maybe they had bugbears and fears about what really contains or is contained in the report, which may be pointing accusatory fingers to the two of them?
Debarl, we are just seeing the theater of the absurd, because some people resigned and they did not submit their resignation letters. Now they are going back through the back door. And then there's a scandal, a big one, where monies are not accounted for. And this has become very interesting. Just the other day, we also had that KICC could not even account for its own 1.4 billion. Now I see the National Assembly has advertised to audit the Auditor General. I hope we will also not get a scandal in the Auditor General's office. I mean, Kenyans are tired. In the same vein, you have issues to do with us raising 70 billion from taxing fuel. So we set up IEBC for failure, because if you look at the Kriegler recommendations, we only put these people into office 7 months to elections, yet they were supposed to be there at least 2 years or 15 months, minimum. So they were bound to have these issues, because when you have a lot of money you're supposed to spend, whereby every voter, the cost of voting is 2,500 shillings.
Yes.
So then it is like having a glut. You have too much. And I remember one of the former officials of IEBC confiding in someone saying that you cannot superintend over billions and not make away with something. So that is a mentality. And of course, obviously, within the culture of impunity, it follows that then the motivation would be the glorification of thieves who steal from the public and end up being elected as public officials. I mean, NYS is a very good case study, really. So I will not be surprised that former IEBC commissioners, after they have gotten off the hook in the judiciary, they will then come back to this panel on some AM live. I hope you will not be the moderator as elected officials. Hail the thief. And you know, Debarl, even 2,000 years ago,
yes,
people exchanged Jesus for a thief, Barabbas. We are still, going for the thieves even today.
Right. Let's hear from let's hear from Jacob Medu. Good morning.
There's too many words of wisdom this morning. Yeah. But Debarl, allow me to first of all send a message of condolence to people from Game who were massacred 7 days ago at Wagai Market. Yeah, basically 2 watchmen were killed and 11 shops were robbed. And it was happening more or less on a daily basis in the previous week. So as some of those people I know, actually many of the people who own the shops, I must take my earliest opportunity to send a message of condolence. Having said that, Debarl, I think there is really not much to add to what the three honorable members have said, particularly Honorable Mwaura. You know, if Parliament wants to audit Auditor General, Parliament is being accused of corruption. So it seems to me there is so much disorder in our country that something must give. Let me give you an example of that ugly building next to Parliament. I opposed the building of that thing in the parking lot of Continental House. It was budgeted for 3 billion. Now it has chewed over 10 billion and it is not complete. And I can tell you the thieves are known. And they are elected officials. Even if you go to the things Mwaura is saying, when you saw Jubilee, although now we are in the handshake, Jubilee looked everywhere and could not find a good Kenyan to lead their campaign other than Chirchir, who was in Chicken Gate. This is IEBC we are talking about. Then everybody here may just be culpable. You may find like there is no good Kenyan. Because if the ruling party, using the intelligence and all that, cannot find somebody of integrity, somebody who is not even, who has been mentioned in collapse of poster,
yes,
and all those things, there's a problem. I did say when Halwale and many people were dancing on the street saying, Okoa Kenya, IEBC must go. I said I even met the sitting IEBC commissioners in Mombasa.
Yes.
They said the problem here we know there are 2 parallel systems, NIS and us, and how there's still elections now we know. Let us sit down and make a law that will not make Kenyans kill each other after elections. Change the architecture. Like now I want to say here and now, we will be here after 4 years, after bloodshed, if we don't do anything, when this does not prompt us to do anything, you cannot have an election of this many seats in an evolved system using a national platform. It will never work.
Right. Let's say from Kimani Wamatangi. Good morning.
Morning, Debarl. Let me also say good morning to our viewers. Debarl, on this debate of IEBC.
By the way, I didn't know you're a very good choir master. I think I saw you on Sunday singing somewhere.
Oh, was I? Oh, right. Oh, yes, I can. You know, I'm a good Christian.
All right.
Now, on this one, Debarl, I think we have had the discussion on IEBC for quite a long time. And Debarl, a few things one would ask themselves. Look at the trend we have set. When we put up the last 3 electoral bodies consecutively, and until the last one that we disbanded of Isaac Hassan, and then quickly put up Chebukati and his team, if one would just look, you know, try to peek in and pick out whether there is sincerity in the process, and the answer that you would get largely would be no. Ask yourself, why in a country whereby we know we'll be facing an election at a certain time and dates are set in the constitution, and so you expect that there will be an election. Why does it look acceptable and admissible that we would always be waiting for the 11th hour to put up the electoral body and quickly patch it up? And we know for sure that these are people we're putting into office, and then we will allocate them billions of shillings, which they must spend within a particular time. And the first question that is important one would ask themselves is, are the commissioners the only beneficiaries out of these deals that they do? Because it is for sure that they do deals. And the question then that would beg is, do they have sponsors in the process of putting them in there? Because, Debarl, these things you can't run away from. And especially with some of the revelations now that you are seeing after a lot of these scandals are broken up, you find that most of these people who have carried out mega scandals have also got sponsors, and sponsors in high places, for that matter. And such that, you know, you can, and ask yourself too, and I believe Kenyans would still need to ask themselves this question. We have 3 commissioners now in office. Do you know by law that those 3 gentlemen can still pass binding resolutions on all matters election in this country? Still. And why isn't anybody talking? Why isn't anybody saying there is urgency if these particular commissioners who have resigned, and remember then that last debacle, why isn't anybody in a rush to say, or in a hurry to say, let's fill up these spaces? Remember, one of the cardinal principles of putting up those commissioners is to have, you know, equity and equality and fair representation across the country. So you're saying that still there are by-elections that are going on.
Yes.
Why is it not important? And if informed by the recent actions, as was alluded to some of my colleagues here, that haste that was seen in a few of those commissioners, and trying to go back, one would want to ask themselves, why was it then important that they would go back? And so eventually, you know, there's one of the great mentors of the 21st century in morals, called Dr. Norman Vincent Peale.
Yes.
He said that there is nothing more confusing than leaders who speak principle and speak of goodness, and yet act in confusion. And so I would want to say that I believe there is more to it than meets the eye in the IEBC scandal. We need to find out what's happening. But for sure, a lot of our money, taxpayers' money, have been taken away by these guys, especially in the award of those tenders. Look at the kind of tenders that were giving out at that time, Debarl, in billions, within no time. And you know, one of the overriding laws they can use is they would always come up and factor in the sense of urgency.
Thank you.
And so once they argue that there's urgency in procuring this item, they can go ahead and bend all the rules.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Of course, Boni Khalwale, you're listening to Bilembe FM while we are on air. What is that? Show. Oh, you're switching off. Oh, okay, fine. That is not admissible on this show.
No,
yeah, listening to.
You had told him to wail, and probably he was trying to Google the different ways of wailing.
All right, let's move on now and just focus on what Okiya Omtata is doing right now. Activist Okiya Omtata has filed a petition at the Milimani Law Court seeking to stop the 16% levy on petroleum products. The petition was filed yesterday, and a certificate of urgency seeking temporary orders to stay the implementation of the KRA levy. Omtata says the decision is unconstitutional, invalid and unfair. In the application, Omtata says the decision to impose the new levy has a negative impact on members of the public and should be suspended pending determination of his case. He says the state has violated the constitution by limiting rights to property and advancement of socio-economic rights. Omtata observed that Treasury CS Henry Rotich allowed the implementation of a new levy in total defiance of Parliament, which suspended the same. Let's just take a listen.
The application I've had is to request the judge to suspend it. But ultimately, in my prayers, I'm praying that the particular provision of the VAT Act be declared unconstitutional for infringing very, very clear and specific provisions of the Constitution. So in a brief, that's basically what we have asked for. And of course, when you go to reasonableness, how reasonable is it to have a tax constituting about half the price of a product? How reasonable is it? We're also looking at the question of reasonableness, and you ask yourself, how reasonable is it to literally kill the goose that lays the golden eggs?
And also the Central Organization of Trade Union or Unions is suing the national government for what it terms as the rising cost of living following the 16% VAT rise on petroleum products. Speaking at Koboikiek village in Ainamoi constituency, Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli says the case filed yesterday seeks to reverse the implementation of a tax that has led to the rise in cost of fuel across the country. Kotu is further accusing Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank of seeking to make the lives of Kenyans hard. Atwoli has listed the National Treasury, Kenya Revenue Authority and the Energy Regulatory Commission as respondents. And here why.
Hii nyongeza ya mafuta, inji hii uchumi hakutakuwa na mtu yeyote ambaye atapata chakula, hakutakuwa na mtu yeyote ambaye atasafiri, hakutakuwa na mtu yeyote ambaye atapata dawa ya hospitali na nini, kwa ajili kila kitu ambacho kinafanyika katika inji hii kinategemea mambo ya mafuta. Na tunauliza rais, hata kama akiwa China, anasikia mambo ya Wakenya wanasema bunge ilisimama na wananchi na Rotich amekataa, na watu kadhaa na wale wa IMF and World Bank wanasema ni lazima Kenya, wananchi wa Kenya watozwe kodi ya 16% kwa mambo ya mafuta.
Now, here's the latest development according to the Business Daily. Now, this is MPs who are trying to recall House over fuel tax as shortage looms. He says levy row. Nandi Hills MP Alfred Ketera says 150 lawmakers have supported calls to discuss Treasury CS Henry Rotich's defiance of their vote. And it says also, MPs want National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi to recall the House from recess to discuss the Treasury's implementation, of new tax on fuel as a strike called by small petroleum suppliers signaled a possible shortage of the commodity. And we want just to throw this to our panelists this morning. Is this an exercise in futility because they're seeking to, some of them saying to impeach Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich, but how or what does the Constitution hold as far as impeachment of a Cabinet Secretary is concerned? Boni Khalwale, are they batting their heads on the wall? Because we know...
I think we are seeing more of anger than reason. MPs are generating more heat than light. If they could keep focus on how a bill becomes an act, then how that act then becomes effective, they would not be misleading Kenyans.
Yes.
To attempt to impeach Rotich is simply to engage in escapism. If there's anybody now who must take responsibility, is His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta. Rotich is implementing what is already law. And law is that by 1st of September 2018, that new regulation, a new rule has to operate.
Yes.
To operate.
Yes.
Now, if Rotich